Good morning, LCC kids. Happy Sunday. Thanks for jumping in to our time together to study the Bible. You know, we're now in the month of November, and we are in the season of flavors. Right, we're coming off of Halloween. Maybe you got some candy on October 31st, our Reformation Day celebration. We're going into Thanksgiving this month, and then Christmas is coming. I bet you can feel it already. I don't know, Christmas can't come soon enough this year. What's your favorite holiday treat that you like to eat? We're going to play a game that's going to show some pictures of some things, and you have to guess, is this something that would be toxic or tasty? If this were to show up on your plate, does it belong at a Thanksgiving feast or maybe a Halloween party gone wrong? You guess, is it an edible creation or something that you need to stay away from? Let's try these one at a time. Let's go ahead and see our first picture up here. If you were strolling through the park or doing a little nature walk and you came across this, is it toxic or tasty? And by the way, kids, whatever you see on the screen, always ask your parents or responsible adult before you eat anything you find outside. All right, well, go ahead and give us the answer here. That is actually toxic. It's belladonna, also known as devil's berries, death cherries, or deadly nightshade. You do not want to eat those, even if it looks like little pieces of chocolate growing on a tree. All right, let's do another one. Toxic or tasty? Something delicious or some forbidden fruit? And I think you were already given the answer. Let's go ahead and show them there. The strychnine tree, better known as poison nut. 30 milligrams of these toxins are enough to be fatal to an adult and will lead to a painful death from violent convulsions. You heard it all here. By the way, in old mysteries, people used to get poisoned with strychnine, so fun fact for you there. And all this is on your LCC Kids videos. Let's go to our next one. That actually looks pretty tasty, if you ask me. What do you think? If you found that, would you want to give it a try? Or would you live or die to regret it? What do you think? You shout at home, toxic or tasty? Give it a nibble. And let's have the big reveal. That is tasty. Zucchini blossoms. They're edible flowers of the Curbita species, served breaded and fried. They are the jalapeno popper of Italy. It does look like it's got an Italian flair to it. All right, number 4. Oh my goodness. That seems like it belongs in the holidays of last month. I don't know. You came across that. What are we staring at here? Some brain, some plant, something an animal has left behind maybe? I don't know. All we needed to figure out though, is it toxic or tasty? You give your best guess from home. And the answer is, it is toxic. It's not a brain. It is false morel. If eaten raw, it's one of the top 10 deadliest mushrooms on the planet. You're looking at a mushroom right now. You will be in a coma within a week if you eat it. You'll be sleeping for a long time, and hopefully somebody would be able to wake you up. Well, we'll check out a few more of those in a little bit. This is weirder stuff than you'll find on the Discovery Channel, but you're seeing it all right here on LCC Kids YouTube channel. But the reason why I picked this game for today is because we've got a story in the Bible that takes us through some tasteful experiences. The title for today is The Kind Redeemer. The Kind Redeemer. And this is about the story of Ruth. And we'll find out in a moment what we mean by the kind Redeemer. But in another way, this is a story about different kinds of taste. Maybe you're familiar with the phrase bittersweet. Somebody might describe something as being bittersweet, meaning it was good, but it was also hard. It was challenging, it was sad, but it led to something rewarding in the end. Right? If you've eaten a lot of candy recently, and my kids still have a lot of candy in our household, we're trying to get rid of it. then you've been loading up on the sweets. But, sweet, think chocolate. Bitter, think like your parents' coffee without the cream and the sugar. And if you were to just drink it while it's black, that's what we call something that tastes kind of bitter. Now, your taste buds can change over time, and I like to drink my coffee just black, and the bitterness, it's a good way to wake you up in the morning. But Ruth in this story and Naomi, those around her, they experience something bitter on their way to experience something sweet. And so let's talk about it together. Our first point is a bitter kindness. There was this man named Elimelech, and he lived around the time of the Judges, same time period in the Bible as guys like Gideon and Samson that we've looked at. It's a time that was very confusing because there was a lot of chaos happening to God's people. And this man, Elimelech, really easy name to say there, he notices there's a famine in Israel. And so he's going to take his family and they go to a nearby nation called Moab to live, to try to find food because there's a famine in his hometown and there are problems in Israel. And so he actually has to leave home. And he takes with him his wife, Naomi, and he has 2 sons. And his 2 sons, they grow up and they get married to women in Moab, these Moabite women. One of them is named Ruth, and the other one is named Orpah. And they come in, they join the family there. But then all of the men of the family, I don't know what happened if they ate those toxic mushrooms, but they die one after another. Elimelech and both of his sons. And so now his wife Naomi is left behind as a widow without a husband. And her daughters-in-law, Ruth and Orpah, are both widows without husbands. And so Naomi says, it's time for me to go back home to Israel. And she turns to Ruth and she turns to Orpah and she says, you've been faithful to me. I'm going to go back to my nation. You go on, get married, start a new life now that my sons are no longer alive. But Ruth says this. She says, wherever you go, Naomi, I am going to be with you. Your people, Israel, they're going to be my people, and your God is going to be my God. I want to follow your faith, and I will be faithful to you. And Naomi says, you have shown me this amazing kindness. But she comes back to Israel, and she tells her people and her extended family and her tribe there, don't call me Naomi anymore. The word Naomi, it's a Hebrew name that means sweet. She says, call me Mara. And Mara means bitter because God has dealt bitterly with me. Think about that statement. God has brought a bitter taste to my mouth. Now, she's not complaining. She's not accusing God. She's not even necessarily saying something wrong. She recognizes that God's in control over everything. But right now, what life has meant for her, it tastes bitter. Her husband has died. Her sons have died. She was living in a foreign nation and then has to come back home empty-handed. And yet, even in this, she notices God has been kind to her through Ruth, because Ruth has promised kindness to be with Naomi no matter what. No matter where Naomi goes, Ruth says, I'm going to be there right with you. And we're going to see how God blesses that decision that Ruth made and ultimately brings about something sweet in just a minute. But let's go back to our toxic and tasty game and see if you might eat some of these treats. All right, let's see. Got looks like a rose, some kind of flower there. I don't know. Would you reach out, grab a bite of that? Is that going to be toxic or tasty? What do you think? You guess at home. And that's tasty. That is a rose. All roses are edible, with the flavor being more pronounced in the darker varieties. So, I don't recommend nibbling your mom's rose garden later, though. She might not be happy. All right, let's do another one. All right, what are we looking at here? Is this some kind of creature? Is this some kind of rock or shell that was dug up from the ocean? Main thing we want to know, is it toxic? Will it give you a bad stomachache and possibly kill you? Or tasty? Something you can eat, live to see another day. What do you think? Well, let's see. That is tasty. That is the 100-year-old egg. It's a Chinese preserved food product and delicacy made by preserving duck, chicken, or quail eggs. Now, it's not toxic. I don't think that means it's tasty. In fact, I've spoken with some people who have eaten a 100-year-old egg, and they were not so happy about the way that that tasted. Basically, they take an egg and bury it in the ground and in like manure and let all that stuff seep in until the egg gelatizes. I don't know what the word is for that. Let's move on. What is staring back at us here? Well, the one thing we want to know, is that toxic? Looks like it. Is it tasty? Not likely. You guess. People all over the world enjoy eating fish eyes. The fact is, these are the most nutritious parts of the animal or fish to consume. They are the superfoods of the animal. They were staring back at us. Actually, I have a friend who she grew up in her family, and she and her brother and sister would fight over the fish eye because they wanted to be the one to get to eat it. So, different cultures, different strokes for different folks. All right, I think we got at least one more. What are we looking at here? Something tasty or something that belongs in the Super Mario Land? I don't know. Some kind of mushroom. What do you think? Well, let's find out. That is toxic. The fly agaric is the iconic toadstool of children's fairy tales, instantly recognizable with its bright red cap and white spots. You would have to be an idiot to eat one of these. So, kids, if you ever find something that looks like it's straight out of a fairy tale or straight out of Mario, you know it's deadly to consume. So don't even think about it. Let's go back to the story of Ruth. We talked about a bitter kindness that they experience. Bitter in life, disappointing, difficult. We've had our share of difficulties we've all experienced this year. But even in these things, God is kind. Let's talk about when God changes it to a sweet kindness. Well, Ruth and Naomi, they come back, but they're poor. They don't have husbands. They don't have anybody to look after them or take care of them. And so God had planned for the poor people in Israel to go out to any field, and it was called gleaning. They would just go pick the leftovers of the grain or the fruit and be able to take that home to eat and have a meal. And she goes and gleans, Ruth does, in the field of a man named Boaz. And the Bible says that Boaz shows her kindness. That word kindness shows up all over this book. And then Ruth, her mother-in-law Naomi says, Boaz is actually one of the family redeemers. What's that mean? Well, the plan was, if there was a widow, if her husband had died, and she needed somebody to look after her, an extended family member could redeem her. In other words, come in and marry her, take care of her, provide for her needs, redeem the line, the family line. And Boaz was a redeemer. And so Ruth shows up one night at Boaz's house, and she says this, "Spread your wings over your servant because you are a redeemer." And Boaz says this, "You have shown me kindness by not running after one of the younger guys, but coming to me, wanting to marry me." This is a love story in this book. It's amazing what God does here. And I love what it says next. Boaz didn't rest until he settled the matter. And so he goes out and he figures out what he needs to do in order to redeem Ruth, and he marries her and takes her to his own home and takes care of all of her needs. And they have a son. They have a son named Obed. And then Obed has a son named Jesse. And then Jesse has a son named David, who's King David, David and Goliath. And he has a great-grandson named Jesus, who would come and who would be the kind Redeemer who would spread his wings around us, that we would take shelter under his redeeming kindness. And that word for kindness that gets used throughout the book of Ruth, it's this Hebrew word chesed. You got to kind of sound like you're coughing up a mushroom when you say it. Chesed, God's kindness. And it's about God's loyalty to his people to always take care of our needs and to redeem us ultimately from our greatest need. Jesus came to pay the full price of our sin. In the same way that Boaz came and paid the price for Ruth and took her into his home and provided for her, we have a kind Redeemer who has done the same thing for us. And so that whatever we face in life, moments that feel bitter, that taste nasty, moments that taste sweet, and where we realize God really has been good, all of that would be ours, and we would have the confidence that God loves us and is kind to us because of his kind Redeemer in Jesus. And that, my friends, is the story of Ruth, but it's what every story in the Bible is all about. It's all whispering his name, and we'll find out how the next story points to him next Sunday. We'll see you then.